Hi there, my name is Jake Blue. I've been to all 50 states in America, and now I live in this camper van full-time, sharing my favorite places I found across the country in these YouTube videos. Today I'm going to the most underrated state, I think, in the entire union, called New Mexico. Please enjoy. New Mexico has a mixed reputation among van lifers. Personally, it's one of my favorite winter destinations in the whole country. This place is amazing, but I also can't deny the fact that it's the place I've had some of the scariest, most life-threatening experiences of my life while being on the road. So the goal of this video is to try to explain some of the mystery that makes up this very bizarre state. And the best place to start is at the most well-known town in the whole state, Taos, New Mexico. Here we are once again walking the streets of the place that changed my understanding of American history forever. This is Taos, New Mexico, and it's one of the most confusing towns in all of America. Why? Well, let's get into it. See, back in the late 1400s, back when Columbus sailed the ocean blue, the European countries were sending out conquistadors and conquerors to discover the New World and claim it for England, claim it for Spain, claim it for France. Well, while Columbus landed over on the east coast of the United States, the Spanish conquistadors landed down in Mexico, and around 1540, they made their way up the Rio Grande, where current day the United States and Mexico is separated, and followed it all the way up here into northern New Mexico. 1540, that's over 200 years before the Declaration of Independence was ever signed. So that means there is a massive chunk of American history that we're just really not taught about in our history books when we're growing up that started way over here in New Mexico, which is so fun. It is so cold outside, so I'm getting back into my van right now to put on warmer clothes, but we're here and we get to show off all the amazing places this unbelievable town in northern New Mexico has to offer. First stop, my favorite coffee shop. One of the many things that is criminally underrated about New Mexico is the food scene. New Mexico grows its own hatch chilies. These come in green and red varieties, and to this day, New Mexico is still one of the greatest food states in the entire country because of that one ingredient. It doesn't get any better than right here in places like this. It is really fun to be walking these streets again and learning about American history long before the American Revolution. But the reason I come to Taos isn't for the architecture, isn't for the history. It's really because of the outdoor recreation, because most people think New Mexico is a desert. This place has wild and rivers, and particularly important during winter, hot springs. Here we are on the road to the Rio Grande, the river, one of the coolest places ever. And even more importantly than the Rio Grande is hot springs, because it's so cold outside. So on the walk, this is going to give me a good opportunity to talk to you about one of the more difficult conversations to have about New Mexico and why a lot of people don't like it, and a lot of people like me think it's one of the coolest places ever, but I find it hard to deny the fact that some of the relations you have with people here are difficult. See, the most important thing you need to know about New Mexico when you come down here is that more so than any other state in the Union, Native American culture still exists here in some vibrant and magnificent ways. And for people like me who think it's probably the coolest culture ever, with the colors, the stories, the people, the traditions, I love it. It's really, really fun. However, people who look like me in the past were responsible for extirpating basically all of Native American culture all across the United States. And here in New Mexico, where that culture still exists, those stories and atrocities of the past are not so easily forgotten. So if you are naive, like I was when I first came down here to New Mexico, and you don't understand the people, the culture, the history that goes into creating a place like this, then coming down here can feel like a very scary and cold and isolating experience. Why? Because even though I, and probably you, didn't have anything to do with Native American persecution, atrocities, war, and racism that happened in the past, people who looked like me did all that stuff in the past. White skin, blonde hair, blue eyes. And even though it's not ideal, that's something you have to be so aware of. When such atrocities have been committed You have to be aware that not everybody thinks like you, and that you may remind them of a very tormented past. You should have seen the looks I just got just out here. I'm out in front of the no trespassing zone in the Taos Pueblo, and it's segregation. This is a form of segregation here in America, except it's not government mandated. It's because the tribes do not allow white people to come on their land like me. I just filmed at the front. I didn't even cross, and I saw 2 cars drive by, and the people looked at me, were like, "Don't do it, dude. I'm warning you, do not cross that line." This is why a lot of van lifers like me have horror stories about New Mexico, will come in with no education about the past that's happened here. Some young white kid that in the eyes of potentially other people is very privileged will roll into some little Native American town and think, "Oh my gosh, this is so cool. I can set up camp right down the road." And that, in my scenario, was when I did that, is when the flashlights came looking for me in the middle of the night. I don't know what the people were doing, what they wanted, but I'll tell you, it's a really scary experience to wake up with barking dogs and flashlights outside your window, and then to drive a few miles down the road and have the same thing happen again. And before till the end of the night, I felt like I was being hunted, scared to death, and didn't want to ever come back to New Mexico again. Combine that with the fact that New Mexico also has some of the highest drug and alcohol abuse rates in all the country, and this can feel like a super, super scary place. But as you get older, wiser, and smarter, places like this just become one of the coolest places to visit on the planet, because nowhere else in America or in the world can you experience a culture quite like this. And it also has places like right here on the Rio Grande River. Oh my gosh, I'm the only person here. Let's go. This is incredible. It is only the first of several hidden gems that I want to show you here in New Mexico and change the reputation of this fantastic state to one that you really should visit this place, because it's unlike anywhere else. So let's rally up, and I'll see you in the next zone. Here we go. Up to the top of Sandia Peak for our next stop. Oh my gosh, welcome to the top of Sandia Peak. 10,300 feet above the New Mexico desert, way down here, is a snowy peak. Who would have ever thought, man? This is so cool. So there are hiking trails that go for ages out here. I'm not gonna do the whole thing down today, but what I am gonna do is that there's a very cool restaurant up here. It's supposed to be like a luxury restaurant that we're gonna go eat at before we move on. Remember how I told you one of the greatest foods in New Mexico was the hatch chilies? Well, they had it up here, and one of the most famous dishes they make with those green chilies is green chili beef stew with homemade tortillas, and oh my goodness, it was like $21 for a couple bites of food, but yo, this food is the best. This mountain is spectacular, but it's just a short stop today because we still have more to see today in New Mexico before we get down to the real good stuff down south. Oh my gosh, this place is amazing! Wow! I'm about 200 miles south of Taos, New Mexico now to welcome you to El Malpais National Monument. What an unbelievable hidden gem this place actually is. So relatively recent on the geologic time scale, there was a number of volcanoes that erupted through this zone. And now below me, what you're looking at is a giant black lava field, but very interestingly, because of all the nutrients that came up with that lava, this whole thing is a pinyon forest growing straight out of black, jagged lava rock that is almost impassable for any normal person, and that's why it's a sanctuary for the wildlife. How awesome. One of the amazing things about being down here in New Mexico and seeing unbelievable sights like this is that there's no one here. I was just in the visitor center looking around trying to learn about this spot. There was only 2 other people in the whole beautiful visitor center. Look at how beautiful this whole building is, and no one's here. And I've got the whole parking lot to myself, just my van right down here. As amazing as it is down here in New Mexico, this is really only an intermediary stop to some of the more amazing things even further south. But on the way there, I have like some cool stuff to show you. So check this out right behind you. I finally got serious about my storage system here in the van. I got a Tupperware and an incredible upgrade that I've been waiting to get the whole year. Check it out. This is my first Starlink. I thought about getting one of these for a very long time, and I finally went and did it yesterday, along with I bought a new flannel to look better for some of the group trips I'll be hosting. I got the storage system set up, and now I have Wi-Fi anywhere in the world, basically, so I can upload videos, I can do all that stuff. It was a little bit of an early Christmas present to me, and I'll definitely be testing this out a little bit later in the video. But for now, we got still a ton of driving to do, and the next spot we're stopping at is called Truth or Consequences, one of the funniest town names, but it's famous because it has some epic hot springs. Oh, I slept so good last night after driving so far, and today we have kind of a special little stopover moment. Here is the River Bend Hot Springs in Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. Now, Truth or Consequences honestly isn't a town I'd normally recommend spending a ton of time in. It's not my favorite, but this hot springs is one of the best I've been to in the American Southwest, and it is just gorgeous. Oh my gosh. So I got an RV slot here last night. Now this morning I'm going out to breakfast with my dad. We'll soak here, and then I'll see you at White Sands National Park, New Mexico, next. So I'm here with my dad down in New Mexico. We're trying the chilies, and they serve you red and green chili. In every one of these restaurants you go to, they grow the peppers here. They're the same pepper. The red one's just a little bit more mature. Oh, no. That one's a little spicy. This is White Sands National Park, the only national park that my van sort of blends into as I walk away from it into the sand dunes. So it's a little bit too bright and sunny for me to want to go too far right now, because this is a desolate, sort of aggressive place to survive. But if you look off towards the mountains, this goes for miles. So I'm gonna wait till the sun starts to go down a little bit this evening, and then I'll take you out into the sand dunes. The sun is finally going down here in White Sands National Park. I've been parked here the whole day because my new tool, the Starlink, I've been able to work on my laptop the whole day in a no cell service zone here in White Sands National Park. Right now I'm planning out the trip calendar for the next full year, where I'm going to be hosting van trips all the way up the East Coast, going to South Dakota, one of the most underrated states in America, just like here in New Mexico, and all the way over to the Oregon coast, and then like Portugal and Mexico, and oh my gosh, tons of stuff. Almost done, but now it's finally cool enough to go for a little jog, so we can't miss golden hour. Let me show you this place. Go, gotta go, gotta go, gotta go, gotta go, gotta go. gosh. I just missed it. I just missed Golden Hour. I just missed my window. I worked right through it. Oh my gosh. That's sad. I've long been part of the philosophy that van life and travel life is not perfect. But the good news about that is that even on days like today, when you just miss the golden hour, just as everything lights up and the sand goes golden, perfection is way overrated. And it is definitely still spectacular out here. The deserts here in New Mexico are spectacular, but as a born and raised mountain kid, there's only so much I can take before I have to go back to the forest. So that's where I've taken you today. We're nearby a place called Cloudcroft, New Mexico. It's actually on my list of the greatest small towns in America that you can find in the description here below. But for today, before we go to our next place to learn about aliens, which is going to be very exciting, I had to stop by in the forest and enjoy some of the wilderness here by taking a mountain biking ride. So let's hit it. That was probably the single tamest mountain biking trail I've ever ridden, but it did do the trick and it got a little forest back in my system. The birds are chirping and we're ready to go take on the desert and introduce you to a place that made national headlines back not too long ago for an extraterrestrial event. Here we are back in Roswell, New Mexico, and I'll tell you, I'm normally not this excited to come to a little tiny drive-through town in the middle of the desert with no mountains, no water, and next to zero tourist activities. Yet, this is still one of the hidden gems of New Mexico, and the answer why comes down to a very special night back in 1947 where something unexplainable happened here in Roswell. Many of you watching this have probably heard of the Roswell incident in the past. However, if you are unfamiliar with it, let me share the specifics with you before I step into the International UFO Museum to show you all the details. Sometime between 11 and 11:30 p.m. on July 4th, 1947, an unidentified craft of unknown origin rocketed over the skies of Roswell, New Mexico in distress and crashed some 75 miles south of here in a ball of flames on private ranch land. When the U.S. government showed up and recovered this craft, they first reported it as a flying disc. They later revoked that statement and told us it was a weather balloon from a classified experiment. However, there are still people all through Roswell that have a very different story to tell. Newspaper clippings, unknown materials recovered from the site. It is one of the great mysteries of America, and it is a place that I want to show you very much right now. So let's step inside the UFO Museum. The first thing I want to point out to you as we walk into the museum is the hundreds of testimonials and real newspaper clippings that are stapled to all of these walls, all pointing towards the idea that whatever crash landed outside of Roswell was not a weather balloon. I'll zoom in on a few of them for you here. As with any scary story, there is bound to be some exaggeration. But Roswell is far from just a scary story. Many people might deny the stories and pictures and terrified fishermen dragged into a UFO by aliens stories, but that's not all they have here. These are testimonials from real people with real stories from the Roswell incident. I'll read them out for you. My dad was rushed to the base to take pictures of the bodies from the crash at the hangar. Major Marcel, in the company of at least half a dozen FBI types, was carrying an open box filled with non-reflective aluminum-looking metal. Sticking up in one corner of the box was a small I-beam with hieroglyphic markings on the inner flange. I did see some of the material brought in by the rancher. It was a very thin but extremely tough metallic foil-like substance, and some small beams had a sort of writing on it. Could not be torn or cut at all. It was extremely light in weight. One other soldier and I were stationed in one of the ambulance trucks at the recovery site. I couldn't understand why some of the trucks had ice in them. Our orders were not to look under the tarp. I pulled back the covering. There were bodies, small bodies, and they had big heads and slanted eyes. My friend Montoya, the governor, described the beings as short, skinny-like with big eyes. The mouth was real small, like a cut across a piece of wood. 4 little men. One was alive. The second incredible, unexplainable thing they have here are real-life materials recovered from the crash site. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it tells you exactly what each of the equipment, what each of the materials are right here. 3 was a military button, so that's why you can see that right there. But some of these other ones are very different. The most interesting of all these materials is number 2, this one right here, because it is made with 3% molybdenum. So that is an alloy that is unknown on Earth, basically, and as far as we know, was unable to be produced with that kind of composition of metal. So even though it is Earth elements, nobody knows how some of these were made. Points to maybe a classified vehicle, or it points to perhaps an extraterrestrial intelligence that knew how to use materials in a way that we can't. Now here you're looking at replicas of what supposedly the creatures looked like from eyewitness testimony. Small, gray, big heads. There are several testimonials here that say one of the creatures was definitely alive when they brought it in. This aluminum material is showing here is because everyone says that they found and recovered from the crash site a sort of aluminum foil that could be crumpled up in your hands but would spring back to full shape. It was an unknown substance that no one had ever seen before, but when they sent it in for testing, all of those materials mysteriously disappeared in the mail. Maybe a hoax, or maybe the government did not want those materials tested. There's no doubt that the museum exhibits here are incredible, but that's not the only thing they have. This is the research library, where they collected every single real document they could find that pointed to the evidence of the craft being from extraterrestrial origin. So let's pull a few of these off the shelves. So this box seems to be magazines of eyewitness accounts made by private entities. So some of it could be lots of speculation, probably some hoaxes, but this is not the only thing we have here. We also have reprinted technical notes from NASA. So let's look at it right here. This is them conducting experiments on things that seem to be similar to UFO origin. It would take a year to go through all the information they have here, but many of these NASA notes are noting the peculiarities about how NASA suddenly started testing all these new technologies after the Roswell incident happened. Now get a scale of how many documents are in here. That thing wasn't a weather balloon. So the last thing I'll leave you with as I'm leaving the UFO museum is a story I personally heard on my first visit to Roswell back in 2022. I sat down in a restaurant next to an old man like 85. His neck was all hunched over, his chin was on his chest, all that sort of stuff. An old man, probably 85, 90 years old, which would work out for the timing of about 1947 when the event happened. And I sat down and just started asking him some questions about what he thought about the Roswell incident and if he remembered anything from back when he was a kid. The guy did not want to talk to me, but his wife was there, and after I made friends with the wife, he started talking to me little by little. And after a while, he told me something that I'll never forget. And he said, when I was a kid, it was either his older brother or his dad that drove the ambulance from the Roswell crash site with the alien beings inside the ambulance to the hospital or to the government center that they had set up over here, where they were never seen again. These bodies disappeared under layers of government security. He was one of the few people that was like actually connected to that event, and he still believed it, and to this day didn't want to talk about it. So, was it real? I don't know. But something crazy happened here in Roswell, and it was not just a weather balloon. There was something the government did not want getting out, and it sure is fun to believe that maybe there were real extraterrestrials on the ground here in New Mexico. I'm right outside a place called the Lucky Bull Grill because I had to tell you the story of the green chili cheeseburger, which has a more storied history to it than maybe any other food I've ever had in my mouth. The green chili cheeseburger was supposedly invented in around 1945 or the early 1940s at a place called the Owl Cafe, 2 mountain ranges over this way. It was created for, apparently, the Manhattan Project scientists who were working on the first atomic bomb that also exploded right over here. So after they were done working on world-destroying potential, they would stop by this little Owl Cafe, and one day one of the guys asked for a green hatch chili to be put and mashed up and put on his burger. Hence, the green chili cheeseburger was born. Not only is it one of the most delicious things I've ever had, it is also a story of American history every time you take a bite of it. This is it. The green chili cheeseburger. Oh my God. I've waited like 10 days to order this since I got to New Mexico, and it is not disappointing. That was amazing. Now, it's the #1 stop in all of New Mexico. After almost 2 full weeks on the road driving through New Mexico, I've arrived here at my final destination, Carlsbad Caverns National Park. Walking around up top on Carlsbad Caverns, you might be tempted to think it's just a cactus-covered gravel field as far as the eye can see, but this is one of the national parks where you have to go down into the earth about 750 feet to discover the largest inner cave room in the entire country. This is crazy. Check this out. Explaining the scale of how big this cave is almost impossible, and capturing it in the camera is an impossible task. The ceiling is 100 feet high. You could fit buildings and skyscrapers in here. This is unbelievable. Oh, Jesus. Oh my gosh, that is it. We are finally finished with the Hidden Gems tour of New Mexico, probably the most underrated state in all of America. Now, next stop is heading down south to do Texas and Florida this winter for my next group trips, and I hope to see you there in the next YouTube video on my channel. Stay wild, be free, and I'll see you soon.